discipline, and shared values beyond aid.
Hello, Ghana. You are tuned into The Issues with Irubad Ibrahim, and today we have a very important guest to discuss a very important topic. We are only a few hours shy of AU Day, and today we discuss what is the relevance of the African Union to the African enterprise, the Pan-African enterprise. We go for a quick commercial break. When we come back, I introduce my guest. Stick and stay with us. Ghana has no reason to fail as a state. Why should a country endowed with rich natural resources be counted amongst the poorest in the world? Why should the citizens of this country be thirsty while they sit next to an endless and abundant pool of water? These thought-provoking questions continue to cry for answers from policymakers. The first edition of The Issues, your platform of social accountability, was informative and educative. We take it a notch higher by broadening the scope of our national discourse to tackle critical issues that have a direct bearing on the socio-economic well-being of Ghanaians. Do make a date with me, Irubad Ibrahim, on The Issues, every Thursday only on GTV, the authentic and trusted voice of Ghana.
Africa wants a freedom. Africa must be free.
Oracles indicated that Kwame Nkrumah, a devil.
Mr. President, there is a coup.
I've never seen such an explosion of joy.
You're welcome back, and today we have in the studio a man you can call a colossus on matters of international relations, Dr. Vladimir Impridanso. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Doc, you're a man of many hats.
I understand, but to say that I'm a colossus speaks a lot.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
You can be a part of this show by sending us your thoughts via WhatsApp. The number to use is 0*555 61034, and it will be rolling shortly on your screens. Doc, you've spoken about the AU for decades on end.
Right.
For millennials and younger people who have not had the full complement of knowing about the historical antecedents from OAU to AU, can you take us down memory lane?
Well, thank you for having me. Actually, it's sad that the current generation and all the late generations have not been made aware of what integration is all about, what the OAU or AU means, what are the aspirations, where are we heading towards, what is the process. It's very unfortunate. I thought somewhere in 2000s, when the euphoria about the AU came, several African countries incepted the idea of having ministries of regional integration. And I loved it. I loved it because I thought that was the time that integration was going to be mainstreamed into the curricula, media, whatever it is, so that we understood it and worked towards it. Unfortunately, by 2004, almost all countries that established ministries of integration had fizzled them. They had all fizzled out. They were then put under ministries of either finance or what they call it, foreign affairs. And in Ghana, we have it now under the foreign affairs. This is the predicament of integration in Africa. Integration in Africa has a long cherished history. We started off, especially after 1945. 1945 is the watershed because one, the World War II ended, and the idea of self-governance, self-determination, emancipation of people were very rife in the United Nations kind of core. It was also in 1945 that the Manchester Conference, Pan-Africanist Congress, was held. At that Congress, two issues came out very strongly. Freedom for all people throughout the world, and the emancipation of colored people throughout the world also. The emancipation of colored people concerned us in Africa.
Yes,
And that means that give them their independence, let them self-determine what they would want to do with themselves. Okay. As Nkrumah said, we would be able to demonstrate that after all, the black man was capable of managing his own affairs. So from Manchester, if you watch out, would-be African leaders who attended the Manchester Conference actually were the ones who bore the mantle, the torch for independence. Nkrumah, Nyerere, Kamuzu Banda, all of them were part of the Manchester Conference. They came back, struggled, we got independence. And from day one of the independence struggle, the clarion call was uniting Africa. To coincide with the founding fathers of Pan-Africanism, the Du Bois and the Marcus Garveys, who really wanted one Africa governed by Africans. So African for Africa, Africa for Africans. That was the genesis. But the Cold War, specifically the Cold War, didn't allow for this oneness of Africa to be realized. So while Nkrumah was calling for oneness of Africa, political independence, if you got independence, you joined his OAS, Organization of African States, which later on became the Ghana-Guinea-Mali Union. The idea was if you gained independence, you joined until the total liberation of the African continent and one Africa, one currency, one this, one that, one that. That didn't materialize. We were Balkanized, and the Balkanization took the form of this one hating this one hating. So we had 3-4 centers: the Monrovia group, the Casablanca group, the Brazzaville group, and those who were supporting Haile Selassie, the Ethiopian kind of. So Haile Selassie brought all of us together. So let's not quarrel. Let's have a compromise kind of organization. So if you watch out, the name in 1963 was Organization for African Unity. People always make organization of. Wrong. It is organization for. It is to organize for unity. That was its mandate.
Okay.
By and by 1999, every effort, in fact, the OAA did very well. Every effort they had to go through, they have done it. And we don't have the AU yet. And so the ideas came that, look, what are we waiting for? Let's go in straight for the diadem. And in this, Muammar Gaddafi played a very significant role. He called for a series of meetings. The first one was held in his place, the 1999 Sirt Declaration, as we normally call it, where he was of the view that this is a time to pronounce one Africa. From Sirt, in Libya, we came to Lomé in 2000, 2001, in Lusaka, where actually the AU was actually born. And in 2002 in Durban, it was christened. So we went on to a new stage of African integration. Now, what are the stakes? The stakes were, we've gone through Abuja, or let's call it the Lagos Plan of Action, which was a self-help kind of thing. But Abuja is one of the main pillars of integration in Africa, 1991, where the Abuja Declaration or the Abuja project had it this way. Let us build one Africa through regional economic blocks. It was the vogue of the day. The EU was doing well. So you have ECOWAS, one ECOWAS, ECAS, Economic Community of Central African States, SADC, South African Development Community, EAC, East African Community, and the Arab Maghreb Union, AMU. 5 centers. Build your economies as if it were one economy. Then they become the building blocks. In 34 years, from 1991 to 2025, we shall have had one Africa. 5 currencies put together to be one currency. Meanwhile, the blocks would institute measures towards trade, enhancement, intensity of trade. Well, integration is trade induced. So intensity of trade, infrastructure development, and what. So we've gone through all these. So this is the basic history until where we are now, where it has been very difficult. Maybe we'll have time to talk about some of the hindrances, some of the hurdles that we need to hurdle before we get there.
Okay.
So basically, this is a short history of African integration.
Even though succinct, it's quite an impressive chronicle of what has happened. Doc, you mentioned that right from the get-go, there were 3 different blocks.
Yes.
Brazzaville, Monrovia, Casablanca.
Yes.
To which of these blocks did our own Dr. Nkrumah belong?
Nkrumah
and how was his ideas markedly different from the other blocks?
Nkrumah was, if not the leader, the torchbearer of the Casablanca group. It came about because of the Algerian question. You know, whilst we were fighting for independence, France decided that they would give up everything but Algeria. Because the southern part of Algeria in the desert was the place where they were testing their bombs. And Nkrumah was vehemently against this. Atomic bomb out of Africa. And again, this Algerian question created a condition for him and the king of Morocco to start some movement where they said no part of Africa may be ceded to any other authority outside. It is one Africa. It's indivisible. So they supported the Algerian government, which was in exile, and they were prepared to send troops to go and fight, just like he was prepared to send troops to go to Zimbabwe to go and fight. So Nkrumah had belonged to the radical group which was saying that Africa for Africans, one Africa tomorrow, kind of. The Monrovia group under Tubman, under first president. Yes, that was Tubman, who called them to a meeting, and then they decided it must be a gradualist approach. We don't have to hurdle ourselves into anything. We don't have to antagonize the metropolis, kind of. And so one way or the other, they wanted a kind of gradualist approach, and they believed that Nkrumah had an ambition. And so they were opposed to most of the things, and they were singing the song of the colonialists that it should be a gradualist approach. And that political thing that we're entering ourselves in was not good. So they had that, to which Nigeria and other places even belonged. The Brazzaville group came about as a result of an attempt to put the two, the Monrovia and the Casablanca group, together. And when they met in Brazzaville, they decided to, for Nkrumah and others didn't attend, though they decided to form another group of themselves.
Division within a division.
Exactly, division within a division. But I see this as a tactical ploy by those who have a vested interest in keeping Africa balkanized. Because they sponsored the program, they kind of thing, and we found ourselves just... And so Haile Selassie did very well by trying to say, look, come along, let's all think. And between 62 and 63, he did very well in convincing heads of state to do what? To come and talk about Africa. If you see the original documents of the OAU, you would realize that it was a compromise solution. The speech of Nkrumah was far away from what Nkrumah stood for, and several others. And the preparatory committee, including our own Kojobotio, who went there as ministers of foreign affairs and who met there to really prepare the ground, weeks for that compromise. It's something which is good.
And Doc, the Monrovia bloc, which had the privilege of, Nigeria as a member, the most populous country south of the Sahara, would you say those moderate voices in Monrovia were sellouts and they didn't believe in the Pan-African enterprise?
I wouldn't say they didn't believe in it, but they didn't believe in the process opted by Nkrumah. They just believed once people have gotten their independence and they have their sovereignty, there should be that give and take and not that kind of command thing. Forget about your sovereignty, let's come together. People also suspected Nkrumah to be eyeing some presidency of Africa. And yes, I wouldn't rule out the possibility that our masters were not very happy. So one way or the other, if they could have countries whom they could deal with easier than having a continent-wide Africa, So that possibility was there, that it wasn't a sellout, but at least they were interested in. And remember, since independence, they have never gone away from our backs. Every opportunity to ensure that they gained from Africa, they did, and they are doing.
In your entreaties, Doc, you accentuate the idea of integration. Would you say the Francophone and Anglophone fault lines have been antithetical to the integration of the continent?
It's one of the biggest problems that we're having. But integration knows no language, it knows no barriers apart from artificial barriers we have created. So there are several hurdles, and one of the hurdles is this language divide.
Okay.
So most of the French countries look up to France and to listen to what France will say. In West Africa, we have that problem. UEMOA, ECOWAS dichotomy. Integration has a logic. And if you fall to that logic, you will never get there. There can't be other unions within a union. Or it is not good for any one country to belong to more than one union. That's the logic of it. You either belong here or you belong there. Now, if the French, by dint of accident, were able to carve out UEMOA because of language, culture, history, and whatnot, then, you know, ECOWAS will be hiccuping, and it is hiccuping up to this day. Because UEMOA has gotten all the ingredients of integration. One currency, customs union already, a common market, and whatnot. So do they care about ECOWAS? But then they have the desire to see ECOWAS go. So there is that kind of pull effect. It's like, you know, pulling the brakes on ECOWAS advancement. Elsewhere, everywhere, in ECAS, it is the same thing. Within ECAS, you have CEMAC. ECAS is the Economic Community of Central African States. But they have economic and monetary union within ECAS. So the brakes are also being pulled there. Within SADC, you have the same thing. You have SACU, which is a monetary union everywhere. Now, we ourselves are to blame also for creating multiplicity of unions. In fact, at a point in time, Nomvete says that we have 35 of them, small ones, and we call it the spaghetti bowl of African integration. You know, when you take a spaghetti, you see how they intertwine. Tanzania belongs to SADC and belongs to EAC. So how can you get one currency for SADC? Because you can't stay outside the union and be part of it at the same time. Now, Burundi and Rwanda have joined EAC, but they are part of COMESA, and Kenya is also part of COMESA. You know, common market for East and Southern Africa. It's crazy, this multiplicity of belongingness and that kind of thing. It's one of the biggest hurdles. So yes, the French would always help. Mind you, maybe until quite recently, every budget from any Francophone country has to be approved in France. Paris. And then you know that their currencies were printed in Paris until quite recently, that UEMOA currency is now printed in Dakar and things like that. So it's a problem. It's one of the biggest hurdles that integration will have to cross before we get integrated in Africa.
Doc, you are saying fundamentally that the residual influence of the colonial times tips the balance in favor of Francophone countries. Are you saying that?
It's not tipping in. For me, it's a debilitating factor rather. It doesn't help them. Unfortunately, if anybody thinks that it's helping, individual countries benefit. Cote d'Ivoire, for example, there is so much French influence. It's difficult to extricate themselves from the French influence of how things are done and whatnot and what. So integration is put at the back burner. All right?
Yeah.
Now, Senegal, where do they go without France? Togo, Cameroon. Cote d'Ivoire has a typical alliance with France in such a way that they have even a base there. Wow. When you have this, in integration also, you need to have commonality of purpose. So supposing the commonality of purpose for integration in ECOWAS stand in offensive contrast to the interest of Cote d'Ivoire, they would opt for the French kind of support. Benin, Cameroon, they have all kind of serious French support. So this is a big hurdle to cross. It's a big hurdle if we really want to integrate. But there's a way of going about it, you know. If we seriously integrate our economies in such a way that we trade among ourselves more than we trade with the North, this will change. And let me tell you, in ECOWAS, in the whole of Africa, we trade among ourselves 14% among African countries. It's only 14%.
So the quantum of trade
Trade,
between
86% is vertical.
Wow.
Horizontally among ourselves, only 14%. ECOWAS is 10%.
Wow.
But trade intensity is the base for integration. The more you have intensive trade amongst yourself, the more you create the conditions for trade by lowering barriers, eliminating barriers to trade, and shoring up things that will bring the trade. One, and shoring up the things include infrastructure development, community development, harmonization of macroeconomic fundamentals. I tell you, integration is so beautiful. And we are missing all these because the petty things that we could run away from, we are not running away from them.
Doc, Anglophone West Africa seems to be at a disadvantage.
Seriously.
Sierra Leone and Liberia have been battered by war.
Yes.
Nigeria isn't looking too good. Then Ghana as well. We aren't looking, and the Gambia too.
Yeah.
So would you echo is a far-fetched, ambition, which is almost a fantasy. So would you say we should coagulate or coalesce around an Anglophone idea to be able to benefit with regionally before we look at the continent?
That was the idea somewhere in the early 90s. In fact, one of the professors we should revere, he has been the doyen of integration studies in Africa, Professor SKB Asante, my former lecturer and now my colleague somehow. We established the Center for Regional Integration in Africa, which is here. The former president, President Mahama, inaugurated it for us, which is a strong center located in Jimpa, for example. No, the point is this. Around that time, 1993, thereabout, there was the idea that these English-speaking countries must fight hard to get a common currency like the UEMOA countries have, the CFA. Then we can put the two together to get one currency in West Africa. Nigeria didn't see, well, why don't we take the Naira and we go? Why don't we take this? And then Abdoulaye Wade in Senegal, why do you worry yourself? Let's take the CFA, or let's call it any name, ECHO, and go straight. Okay. So there was the debate. And they commissioned Professor SKB Asante and Ambassador Bankwa. Okay. President already commissioned them to find out what should be Ghana's position in this. Some of us were consulted. I was under their feet. And we came out with the idea that it was good to have the two currencies. That will bring the Anglophones together. And Guinea joined. So we call it the Second Monetary Zone, WAMI, West African Monetary Institute, and was also working around the clock to see if we could get it by 1995. It was postponed to 2000, then 2005, 2009. Now we say 2015 we shall get it. All these things have fizzled out. Yeah. Now, last year, December, ECOWAS heads of state met in Niger, Niamey, and they decided that, wow, it's time for it. Let's go for the ECO for the whole of West Africa, a common currency for the whole of West Africa. It was reiterated this year in Accra. But look, this is political talk. Integration has a logic. You don't go by that logic, you never get there. To get a common currency, first, there must be trade intensity, factor mobility, ease of transfers. Are we having these? The parameters for what we call the optimum currency area theory, if you drive it aside and you just want political kind of will, oh, no, I'm sitting down here, I wish I had a plane to be, a private jet. But how? Do I know how to pilot it? Do I have the money? Do I have the wherewithal? There are things I could do in order to get a private jet. If I haven't done them, forget it. It will be a dream.
Yes, sir.
So these things we are doing, again, the people for whom you are creating the currency, where are they? The last time I read an article, it's well published, I did a research. And to my amazement, when we were talking so much about the ECHO in the 90s, getting to the 2000s, there was only one billboard about the ECHO where you have the Accra Mall going to Tema. There was one on the Cape Coast Road. and I saw one on the Sam Road going to Kumasi. Then when you are reaching some small town in Ashanti, getting to Kumasi, there was one billboard. The whole of the South, these are the 5 billboards I saw talking about the echo. Come on, give me a break. Are we serious?
Wow.
You know, and I found out that the Makola women had knowledge about the echo than my own students in the University of Ghana. And I asked myself, are our heads of state very serious about that euphoria about the common currency? Look, if you are not trading intensively, look, you have the currency, and the currency is chasing other people's goods. If the currency is to be exchanged in importing Chinese goods, importing British, what are you doing?
You are weakening it.
You are weakening it. It's a useless currency. It doesn't do anything. So let the heads of state, team up with academia. Okay. And let them be serious about the fanfare about integration. Integration has a logic. You leave the logic, everything is a contradiction.
Okay. On this contradictory note, we'll go for a quick commercial break. When we come back, I ask Doc, how come the EU became a latter-day, continental bloc, but is doing better than the EU? Stick and stay with us.
Good question.
But Ghana has no reason to fail as a state. Why should a country endowed with rich natural resources to be counted amongst the poorest in the world? Why should the citizens of this country be thirsty while they sit next to an endless and abundant pool of water? These thought-provoking questions continue to cry for answers from policymakers. The first edition of The Issues, your platform of social accountability, was informative and educative. We take it a notch higher by broadening the scope of our national discourse to tackle critical issues that have a direct bearing on the socio-economic well-being of Ghanaians. Do make a date with me, Irbad Ibrahim, on The Issues, every Thursday only on GTV, the authentic and trusted voice of Ghana.
Let the rhythm of the fatherland be played.
Oh, let the wailing of the
You're welcome back. And we are still with Dr. Vladimir Ntridanso. He's the Director of Academic Affairs at GAFSI. Doc, welcome back.
Thank you.
And Doc, before we went on that break, I was asking you, how come a latter-day invention like the EU is doing much, much better than the African Union that started in '63 as the OAU?
Right. Well, the EU is doing better with it because they are getting everything right. The basic literature on integration shows that that is the way to go.
Okay.
And when I finish, I'll tell you how Europe is now hiccuping because they are also going away from the logic.
Right.
Number one, as I said, integration is trade induced. The EU trades among itself 86%.
And we do 14%.
We do 14%. The opposite. The minimum they have ever come was about 55% when they were uniting fully and that kind of thing. When the currency came, boom.
Wow.
Why? Because they started well. You know, socialization. Those private sectors that whose interest is trade, nothing else. The steel and coal miners, the postal workers, and they started uniting.
Yes, sir.
And their transactions had spillover effect. Let me give you one thing that can cause what we call the transactional effect.
Okay.
Look at Agbelema in Ghana.
Okay.
The Togolese love Agbelema a lot. And if you go to the border, you see a whole range of vehicles.
What is Agbelema?
Agbelema is a condo.
Okay.
And there is the center in Ghana where condo is made when you are going to the Koforidua Road and several other places when they are made and transported to Togo in their numbers. So that trade has a very intensive kind of, you can't stop it because the need, the pull, and the pushback test are strong. Look at it. It engenders something like those who weave baskets for the carrying of the Agbelema, those who will bring sacks, porters, market queens, whatnot, and try and trace. One of my students wrote, I made her write a dissertation on this. And if you see the linkage, when you go to any area, the cost of the basket is almost the same.
Wow.
So business is business. And it links them up with their Togolese counterparts. The porters have the same price and whatnot. So that linkage plus another transaction which Togo needs create a condition for our interconnectedness. So throughout the community, you create a situation where needs and wants from one side fill the vacuum where those needs and, you know. That's how they started.
Okay.
Then on and on and on, these intensive transactions created conditions for what? States to understand that we need to come together.
Okay.
And they came together gradually. The mistake they made was that they didn't write down a constitution. So at a point in time, when they now want to write a constitution, it has become a problem.
Okay.
Sovereignty
So
says,
the EU doesn't have a charter?
no. They now tried a charter. In fact, it was voted upon some 5-6 years ago when they failed in Ireland and another country I've forgotten. Then the next place was France. And that time France has so much crisis that they think they will not vote the constitution, but it's a vote on the then government.
Okay.
So they shelved it.
Okay.
Then gradually, the EU saw that they are harmonizing their macroeconomic fundamentals, a prerequisite in getting a common currency. So you can't get Nigeria having 17% inflation, Ghana having 20%, Gambia having 30%, or I'm just giving figures which don't exist. The minimum you have to get is a single digit inflation. Your budget borrowing from government sources. You can't just have it without breaks.
Wow.
So that the disparities between economies are taken away. Then you can have a common currency. The Europeans did that. When they saw that some countries were lagging behind, they called the countries which are ready, 11 of them, and in the 1992 Maastricht Treaty, they created a currency. Others rushed in, 15 countries forming the Eurozone. Now, the next thing which is very important in the Eurozone or the Europe today is transnational institutions, what you call supranational institutions. The supranational institutions are the ones which are governing Europe. They are the bane of the current problem either. Because British people or Netherlands people, they don't see why it is not their government which is giving them the rule, but the rule is coming from somewhere, Brussels. They didn't vote for the people there or whatever it is, and Brussels is ruining Europe. That's one of the biggest problems they have. But again, it is these supranational organs that have created commonality and common ethic to create an Europe.
Okay.
So once upon a time, was in 1993, I've forgotten the year, but this story came.
Okay.
Tony Blair threatened China of sanctions, of new, what do you call it, you have to write new relationship, that is economic and trade relationship. And then there was a British woman who was the foreign trade and something commission.
The exchequer.
Not the exchequer. No. She's a Brighton but working for Europe.
Okay.
The supranational organ. That is, she was the commissioner for external trade for Europe.
Okay.
The whole of Europe. She's the external commissioner.
Okay.
She had to shout, or I think it was Crawford. She said, Mr. Prime Minister, sorry, you have no right to do. Come to think of a situation where we have ECOWAS. His Excellency Nana Addo Akufo-Addo is angry with, say, Togo, and he's shouting on Togo, wanting to change rules and say, Togo, from now on. Then me, a Ghanaian, no status in Ghana, but I have a state.
You have great status.
No, what I mean, I'm saying a Ghanaian under him.
With no political...
No political position, but I have a position in ECOWAS as the secretary for external trade. Then I said, Nana Akufo-Addo, sorry, with all excuses, go where you don't have that right. Can you see such a situation? But it happens in Europe.
Wow.
Because the supranational organs are the ones ruling for Europe, not for individual countries.
Wow.
So supranationality has helped Europe to be Europe. Do we have supranationality around?
No, we don't.
We don't. Do we have common policies, external policies? No, we have written some of them. Common mining policy, common this policy. We have it written down. ECOWAS has a common mining policy. Does it happen? No. People, Galamsey people here, we are chasing, can go to Mali and continue Galamsey. So supranationality has kept Europe going. The common currency has kept them going. And the commonality is such that they feel European. As I was saying, have we done anything for people to feel ECOWAS? The mainstreaming of integration is lost in the whole of Africa, not ECOWAS alone. So Europe is doing very well just because of all these.
Doc, would you also say what is militating against Africa's integration and unification like the EU has to do with the constant change in governments? Is that a factor?
I wouldn't say that is a factor because integration is a system.
The long-lasting, presidents have been those who have come strongest.
Strongly, that's true.
Like Gaddafi and a host of others. But Dramani Mahama came, and then within a twinkle of an eye, he left. Nana Addo is around for maybe 4 or 8 years. Another person comes. So there's no institutional memory, you would say.
Yes. The point is, integration is a system. So when the system is built, it doesn't matter who comes. The person must fit into the system. But unfortunately, because we haven't built the system, somebody comes and wants to fix the home front first. He's thinking about the next 4 years. Okay. So most parts of Africa, integration is at the back burner. It's not important. They will go and chuckle the glasses and sign great agreements, come back home and say integration is good. But what he's doing is that he's thinking of how to buy votes and go to a second term at least.
So can we relieve them of that apprehension so the African leaders can concentrate on the bigger picture?
The point is this, that what we need is to create integration outside our own, mini systems. For example, can we get 10, 20 African leaders who really are not fanfare politicians? One ECOWAS passport, one African passport. When I want to travel, the last time we were going to Tanzania, it took us more than 24 hours. We went all the way to Ethiopia before we descended to, and waited at the airport for how many hours?
Wow.
When in some places, Africa is big, but in some places, you take your car, we should be able to drive from here to Tanzania. Wow. Come to think of a situation between Boston and Atlanta, if you can picture
distance.
the America and the distance. And I've traveled on that route before. From Boston in the east to Atlanta down there. And it was like traversing a whole continent.
Wow.
Few days.
But here you see a Burkina number plate or a license plate from Nigeria, and the police will even suspect.
Exactly. Exactly. So if we are able to create such a condition, then heads of state don't matter. In places where integration is getting stronger, heads of state don't matter. People are yearning for the integration in such a way that they don't care about you. Because integration will work outside you. You'd rather have to fit yourself into the integration process.
Okay, Doc.
Other than you are out. You have to fit yourself into the, what Britain is doing now is that they are locking themselves out. And citizens have now seen that they made a mistake. Because they are locking themselves out of something which is good. They'll be the losers. But here, we believe we don't lose it. Let me give you an example of, let's assume that Nigeria will say, but we are too big, 200 million people. What market do we need again? We can attract market. We ourselves are a market and that kind of thing. What do they need? Or Cote d'Ivoire and Niger or any other place. The French are supporting us. So heads of state in these countries will be looking for what will keep them in, at least for 2 terms, and nothing else.
Okay.
So until we are able to create supranational organs and let the people also feel united like one community, we would always be hiccuping. Finally, on this same thing, one of the biggest banes against integration in Africa is the problem of insecurity. The many hotspots, most of them arising out of bad governance, is also a bane, because you spend more money trying to create security communities instead of integration. So ECOWAS, we need ECOMOG, we need standby force. We're spending more time thinking about how to get forces to douse the fires rather than how to get forces to integrate.
That's a very good point.
Yes.
And Doc, I'll ask you about the Maghreb and the South African factors.
Yes.
These two poles on the continent don't feel black. They don't feel African. A Tunisian would want to do things in France rather than here.
Sure.
And South Africans behave like Brits.
Right.
How much of a problem is that? Is there superiority complex on the continent?
Well, that wouldn't have mattered in integration so much when trade is pulling things. You know, Morocco now wants to become part of ECOWAS, and my answer is big no, because it will jeopardize the logic. Yes, it's only a feeling of a people. But when the integration is already there, your feeling doesn't matter. Unfortunately for us in Africa, integration in the Arab Maghreb has never been. It is the only union that has not sealed with the AU. They don't have this and that. Here we are, this is what we are doing. So Egypt and Libya, for example, belongs to COMESA. Morocco and Algeria are not on talking terms. Tunisia is locked in between. Sahrawi Republic. So the Arab Maghreb Union is badly hiccuping. Come to SADC, and South Africa feels is too big a giant. And you know, when you go to Southern Africa, one of the things that is not making SADC work is the very fact that most of them look at South Africa as a hegemon, replacing the bigger boy. And South Africa is investing in almost all the countries and not looking for integration. So the feeling of not belonging to Africa does not come in over there at all. The two things that are hampering integration in these areas is the very fact that AMU, made up of countries that don't talk to each other, they don't like each other in the Arab world. Okay. South Africa doesn't feel it. It's a big giant, a big elephant. You need a real this thing to penetrate the skin.
Doc, you are talking integration, and yes, heightened xenophobia is in South Africa.
Yes.
So don't you still think that somebody thinks they are better than others?
You would. Look, the fact that Europe is Europe doesn't mean that others don't feel that they are better than others. Look, in Belgium, the headquarters of Europe itself, the center of Europe, the Flemings don't want to see the French.
Okay.
So people think that there's no ethnicity in Europe. No, it is there. But if a black Brighton and a white Brighton, they don't talk to each other. It doesn't affect integration. What I mean is that integration can be made without these things. As for those feelings, they will be there. In Belgium, those who speak the Fleming language is a mixture of Dutch and German languages. They don't want their children to go to schools where French is the
mode of instruction.
No, they want them to learn French, but within their enclaves, the Fleming language first.
Okay.
Kind of, and that rivalry is there everywhere. In Britain, for example, the Englishman sees the Welsh, and there is some kind of this in.
Or the Scots.
Or the Scot, exactly. So for me, as an integrationist, these things don't matter so much, provided that it's like you are black, I'm white. Where a road is concerned, the road being the integration, where a road is concerned, whether you are black or white, we drive our cars on the same road. So integration first. All these things are human failings, which we can't do away with.
Okay, Doc, I'll take you to some specific issues.
Sure.
Number one, the Western Sahrawi crisis. How has AU fared? It has a Peace and Security Council and all that. How has it fared?
It's a bogey question, because frankly speaking, the United Nations, I think, messed up a little. But generally, the AU is on the side of the Sahrawi Republic.
Okay.
It is what annoyed Morocco and the reason for which Morocco left the AU.
Okay.
And the referendum that was to be, effected to see whether the people would like to be with Moroccans or be self-reliant, self-governing, couldn't be held because of several things. Number one, Algeria is supporting the Sahrawi, the Polisario Front to the hilt, supplying them with everything.
Including weapons.
Including weapons. So Morocco and Algeria, big trouble. The Moroccans have flooded this. They are denying, but that's the fact. Just before the referendum, they flooded the area with Moroccans.
To swell up the numbers.
Just that. And it's one of the reasons why up till now we haven't been able to have the AU position is clear. It is a republic which was abandoned by the colonialists. They didn't make any arrangement. Like in here, there's several other places, DR Congo, several other places, they just abandoned and left. Angola, several other places they did that. But that doesn't mean one country should take it upon itself as if it is theirs. My question has always been, when the Spaniards were there, didn't Morocco know, and why did Morocco not fight them and oust them and take their place? Okay. Only when they left unceremoniously that they now say, but it is because of economic things there, period.
Is it the oil or the
They have got oil, but they got a lot of cobalt. Lot of cobalt. And other minerals, I should believe. And that is why the Moroccans would want to. That wouldn't have affected. I strongly suspect that if Africa has been able to be one by now, or by the 2025 idea, that problem would be solved because it would have been one continent, one currency. Okay. That would be a territory. Okay. But unfortunately, we have not been able to do this, and that is why.
We go for our last commercial break, and when we come back in wrapping up, we ask Doc, should African countries pull out of the International Criminal Court? What is Agenda 2063? That's right. And what is the future of Pan-Africanism? Stick and stay with us. Ghana has no reason to fail as a state. Why should a country endowed with rich natural resources be counted amongst the poorest in the world? Why should the citizens of this country be thirsty while they sit next to an endless and abundant pool of water? These thought-provoking questions continue to cry for answers from policymakers. The first edition of The Issues, your platform of social accountability, was informative and educative. We take it a notch higher by broadening the scope of our national discourse to tackle critical issues that have a direct bearing on the socio-economic well-being of Ghanaians. Do make a date with me, Irbad Ibrahim, on The Issues, every Thursday only on GTV, the authentic and trusted voice of Ghana.
happens and he's an American, don't send him to ICC. Bring him to. We have signed. Ghana, we have signed. I'm telling you, if you don't know. Now that they are attacking our heads of state and whatnot, is it because they are heads of state? We signed. Other than that, my take on this is that the point is that you are not hauled to the ICC just that. I mean, like, bad, you hear you've done something great against Ghana, and we grab you and say, ICC, come take him. No, that is not the case. If Ghana is unprepared to deal with you by the Ghanaian laws, then ICC comes in. So why are we afraid of? Why are we making the ordinary citizen believe that, hey, they are chasing us there? Why are they not chasing Mchidanso? So the point is this, that look, it is false for us to think that what we went and signed was bad only because they are chasing us. Okay. It's only bad because we made it bad, that we signed agreement with Americans saying that as for them they are, and incidentally, Americans are the first to blow the whistle when something is happening in your country. Are we able to blow the whistle against the bushes? What are we doing? If Africa fears the ICC now, the best is to get an African ICC, and the ICC will never see anything. Can we get our own African International Criminal Court to be able to deal with these miscreants? Look at what is happening in Burundi. You got to be there to know what I'm talking about. Give me 1 million a day, I'll never go to that country again. I'll never go there again. Because people are being killed daily. Government sponsored. And then when people are saying, take Nkurunziza to ICC, then me as an intellectual, I sit down here to say that they are chasing Africans? No, I'm not part of it.
Okay. Doc, maybe in future we need to look at the portrait of the ICC.
Yes, we can focus
but in closing, we have about a minute or so to go. Doc, in 2013, this idea of a Pan-African enterprise under OAU, AU, there was pomp and pageantry. We were 50 years old. We are now looking at a centenary, Agenda 2063. You would have been long dead and gone, Doc.
Who knows?
You would have been long dead and gone.
I wouldn't want to stay till then, though.
But would you want our second 50 to be better than our first 50?
That is the expectation of every person on earth. That your next last 10 years, no matter how good, you want the next 10 to be better, and the next to be better and better. So it's a wish. Agenda 2063 is the grandeur African project, wanting to see Africa united with itself and capable of solving its own problem. You know, if you read the Agenda 2063, it's a beautiful document. It's a beautiful thing. The aspirations, the programs, and I wish Africa well. That is what we should be aspiring to. The next 50 years must see us better than we are now, better doing things at the helm of affairs in the world. Because look, Africa is the most untapped continent. We have everything. The Inga Dam in Congo alone can light up the whole of Africa. Wow. We have not done it. The Sahara is a farm for solar, cobalt, whatever we look. The phones you are using, 60% of the things that the phones need is in the soils in Congo.
We have silicon here.
Silicon. You know, nuclear weapons. What do they need? Uranium, and they are here in Africa. Come on. We should make Agenda 2063 work.
Okay, how wonderful. Doc, thank you so much for making time. Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Right. All too soon, we've come yet again to the end of another edition of The Issues. Till we come your way next week with another interesting edition. Stay blessed and keep praying for Africa. Bye-bye.